Good morning. Today, my guest is Mari Ribeiro, Head of IP at Elnaggar & Partners. Mari is an IP lawyer, a speaker, a business coach, and we're very happy to have you here today. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to being on your platform, so thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mari. I just give a very quick introduction about you, and then I will start asking you to introduce yourself in a proper way. You were born and raised in the US. You are registered as a lawyer in Florida, and you moved in Dubai in the UAE last year. Welcome to the UAE.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. And please, I would like that you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background. How did you start with the law, and why did you choose IP, and why did you move to the UAE?
Sure. So I never really intended to be a lawyer. Once I graduated university, I graduated from the School of Music. So I was really into contracts and that kind of arena within the music industry. And I was really looking for a job, and that was in the middle of the housing crisis in the United States. So of course I was applying for work, nobody was hiring at the moment, and I looked at my mom and I was like, what am I supposed to do now? Now that I have this degree, what am I supposed to do? And she said, you're gonna be a lawyer, and she was just very matter of fact about it. And so since I wasn't looking for work, she told me just go to a semester to law school and see how you like it. If you don't like it, you can drop out and you can figure out what else you want to do. I was totally tricked because I'm very studious. I love to study. I love to analyze the law and those kinds of things. And so I did really well in law school. So I became a lawyer because my mom just pretty much told me that's what I was going to be doing. And then once I started working, I was actually a litigation attorney. So I was actually defending insurance companies in court. So I got nice experience for a few years in court. And I quickly found out that while I was good at litigation, I didn't enjoy litigation. So I learned that I was a lover, not a fighter. And once I got laid off from there, there was just no more cases. I started looking for work in the transactional world, putting together deals, making business happen, and I stepped into the world of real estate law. So I became a real estate corporate attorney, and afterwards I also got laid off there, and I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm not supposed to be working for someone else. Let me take a look at how I can maybe establish my own firm. And I really learned that job security is not something that I can allow an employer to provide to me. I really saw that because I was laid off 2 times, if I wanted job security, I would have to create it myself. So that's how I became my own boss and opening up my own law firm. And I was a corporate lawyer, so I was mainly doing business transactions. And one of my favorite clients, they came to me, they were in the logistics and software industry. They came to me and they said, we need a trademark. And I was like, oh, I'll try to figure out how that works. And so I pretty much learned on my feet because a client asked me for a trademark. And once I found out, wow, this is actually really interesting, more so than putting together contracts, I just started offering it to my clients. And eventually, I ended up getting rid of contracts and just only focusing on trademark law because there was just so much more of a story behind the brand as opposed to the story behind the contract. So because I had the freedom to choose who I wanted to work with and the area of law that I wanted to work with, I just followed my interest and I started becoming an expert in trademark law.
Wow. I just noticed one thing out of your speech. Not so many lawyers would be very open to say that they got laid off twice and it was their motivation to start up their firm. Usually most of the conversations that I have, if someone is telling me their story about how they started their own law firm, their own private practice, is turning out of being very successful and having tons of clients and being able to be very valuable in the law firm where they work, and then they decide, I want to go on my own. Not that someone got laid off twice and then they decided, I don't want to get into this again. I'm going to start up my own firm. That's very confident of you. I like it.
Yeah, I would say that I didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. The entrepreneurial life chose me. And unfortunately, I had to have rejected from law firms twice to really understand, okay, God really intends for me not to be an employee. They intend for me, he intends for me to be a business owner who just happens to offer legal services.
Wow, that's really nice. But did you see did you get any message from God as well, since you started your own law firm in transactions and then you switched to trademark? Maybe that is why the first two jobs didn't work out?
Yeah, I really do think that everything happens for a reason. And the thing is that I thought I had a hunch that I would end up working for myself. I just wasn't sure exactly how and the circumstances around it. And to be quite honest, I don't come from a family of lawyers. I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I really did have to learn a lot of this on my feet. And I have been blessed that the way that I learn things is through experience. So I had to go through negative, quote unquote, negative experience at the time in order for me to really see, oh, wow, okay, this is the direction that is really being laid out for me.
Very, very interesting. I actually totally agree with you that negative experiences, especially in our career path, shape up a little bit how strong we are and teach us a lot. And this is one of the things that I totally agree with. And it happened to me as well. And that's why I am where I am right now. I want you to explain to us a little bit what is IP from your own perspective, and what exactly do you do in the IP sphere? What are your services? What's your expertise?
Sure. So intellectual property is essentially protecting your creative works. And there's three different types. There's copyright, which protects with your authorship. So think about music and books and movies, podcasts like yours, website content as well. That would all fall under the umbrella of copyright law. And then we have patents, which I am not a patent lawyer or a patent expert, but that is more about inventions and creating new ways of doing things. That would be under patent law. And then we have my expertise, which is trademark law, and that is really making sure that nobody can copy or steal your brand. And your brand is anything that your customers and your clients use to recognize your products or your service that you're selling. So the trademark world really makes sure that the face of your business can be legally owned by you as the business owner. And
what kind of risks businesses face if they don't register or they don't protect their brand? I know for example, when I registered my brand as Elnaggar & Partners for my firm, I'm protecting the name. Elnaggar in general is a family name, and it's a huge family, and this word is used in many companies because it is repeated as a family name in many countries in the Middle East. So Elnaggar & Partners, for me, I have to protect it because of the very high similarity of the name. So I can imagine that many lawyers with this family name. So me registering it is very important for me not to be associated with someone else or not to be mixed up with someone else. What other examples you might think of that everybody should be protecting their brand for?
So you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, essentially, trademarking is to make sure that there's not going to be any customer confusion in the marketplace. So how is really the audience supposed to recognize that this is your law firm if they don't see your brand? And so what tends to happen is if you don't have the trademark registered, meaning that you don't legally own it, because essentially you don't have any legal rights to it unless the government gives it to you, you're essentially allowing a huge potential risk in that anyone can pretend to be you. And when someone is pretending to be you, they can steer your customers and clients to buy from them as opposed to buying from you. And at the end of the day, how is a client or customer supposed to pick you over someone else? The only thing that they use is the branding. The colors, the fonts, the styles, the designs, those things are unique identifiers. So it's as if someone were to copy your face. How am I supposed to know who's the real Elnaggar if I'm using your face to identify you and say, yeah, I want to work with this law firm. But if somebody is copying your face, I'm going to be super confused. And that actually tends to happen a lot more in the marketplace than we tend to want to believe, especially with business owners who maybe they don't anticipate how big their brand is going to be known and recognized in the marketplace. They tend to undersell themselves and say, oh no, that's not gonna happen. And it absolutely happens. Even within the legal field, I have seen where lawyers try to copy other lawyers' logo and taglines and those kinds of source identifiers because it's catchy, it's unique, it's what stands out. And when you are marketing your products and your services, the main thing that is super important is that you stand out. That's the only way that people are going to choose you over someone else. If you look like everybody else, why would they pick you?
Can you please tell me or explain why is it important to register the trademarks locally and internationally? Because, for example, I'll go back to my example. I'm basically practicing here, and most of my clients are here in the UAE. But in the future, I have plans to practice my business in other countries, like expanding in the region here in the GCC region, maybe even going to Europe and so on. Why is it so important that I register it locally? And if I have to make a plan from the beginning to protect my brand worldwide as well, what could be the risks involved if I don't do that?
Sure. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that there's this global protections as it relates to trademark. I'm going to pop this bubble right now. You do not have worldwide protection. There's no such thing as a blanket protection all over the world. What needs to happen is that you need to register in each of those territories. And so, for example, if you have a business here in the UAE and you have plans to expand worldwide, well, first we need to ask, what does worldwide mean? Are you really going to be in like these tiny countries where you're going to be operating? The answer is probably no. So we need to figure out what countries are you actually going to be expanding into. And then the next question is, when you say you're expanding, are you actually going to be physically located there? Because one of the interesting things about trademarks is you don't actually have to be physically located in that country in order to have trademark protections. What you do have to do is that your brand is being exposed to that country. So marketing in that brand is sufficient. And now when you think about the internet, there's no limitations. So you don't physically have to have an office there. You don't physically have to make any sales there in order for you to qualify for trademark registrations in a new country. So while there's no blanket protections worldwide, it's all about where are you actually going to be marketing your brand? Where are people going to be exposed to your brand that you would not want them to say, hey, that's really catchy and I want to copy it. I was actually learning about, I was reading about some of the cases about some strategies in which you can actually have protections in other territories. And really, you're kind of doing it as like hunkering down, where I'm not actually selling anything here yet, but I plan to. So trademark is all about first come, first serve. And that's why the registration process is super important, because even though you may not necessarily be operating there, you have plans to operate there, but if you don't get in the trademark line, somebody else could come in before you, and then you're going to have to rebrand in that country, and then you can't leverage your reputation that you've built, for example, here in the UAE, and expand it into Europe or in America, for example.
So you're saying that I can start registering my trademark in one of the European countries or maybe in the US before actually having an office there or even a license there. I'm just providing or even planning to start providing my services or selling my products to these countries. So I step in, register my brand. Can I do it on my personal name or can I do it with the company name? Is there a possibility to do both?
Yeah, so actually I'll handle both of those questions. First, when you are going to be entering into a new territory, there are usually two ways to apply for your trademark registration. You can tell the trademark office, hey, I'm already using this brand and my rights are based on actual use, meaning I'm already marketing there, my brand is already exposed to this territory. The other way is called an intent to use, meaning, hey, trademark office, I'm not using the brand right now in this territory, but I plan to within the next short period of time. In the United States, they want you to start using it within 6 months of the intent to use being accepted. So it gives business owners leeway to say, yeah, I want to go ahead and get in the trademark line, even though I'm not necessarily operating or exposing my trademark just yet, but I have plans to do so. As it relates to who's going to be the owner of the application of that trademark registration, this is where you want to kind of think like a litigator. And so if you are owning the trademark application and the trademark rights in your personal name, the same way that you own anything else in your personal name, you're exposing yourself to personal liability. And so what I usually recommend to my clients is let's have the business own the trademark. And this is where we can have a little bit of fun as well. So we're limiting the liability in case that you are ever accused of trademark infringement, stealing somebody else's brand, or if you have to bring a litigation case against someone else stealing your brand, you want to do it in your corporate capacity. And that way you have a little bit more control over limiting how much exposure to liability you have. You can also add another layer of liability protection by having a holding company being the one that is that is holding the trademark rights in the application. So for example, if you're very successful and you have lots of assets within that company, you want to then separate your other IP assets by having a holding company, which is a non-operating company, to be the legal owner of that trademark application, trademark registration. That way, again, if your operating company is defending a lawsuit, there's very little chance that they're going to be able to touch any of the IP assets because you have it in a totally separate company as a holding company.
And it's kind of a very valuable thing when you are in business for 10, 20 years and you build a good name, good reputation, the brand is a value. So when you have it in the holding company, you basically are building the value of that holding company just for the IP. From one side, the operation of the business have a separate price. And this is one of the significant things that we saw in many transactions as well. Let me ask you this question in regards to when shall a company or an entrepreneur start considering registering their brand? Because in the beginning, most of the startups, most of the entrepreneurs do not really want to spend too much. When would you recommend them to start registering the trademark?
So the main thing that I learned in law school is to answer most of these questions with, it depends. So when you are a business owner, my question is always going to be, when are you married to the brand? When is it going to be your worst nightmare that you have to rebrand your entire face of your business? For some businesses, that's before they've even created their LLC, their C corporation, or even started marketing, investing in social media marketing, business cards, website development. There are some businesses where they've put so much love, attention, and energy in creating a brand identity that it hasn't even been into the market yet, but they would be devastated if they had to rebrand. Many business owners really create a lot of value in the uniqueness and distinguishability when they are creating their brand identity. So for some businesses, that may be before they're even launching, before they've even started operating. For other businesses, it might be 10 years down the line. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a company that they are in the catering business, and they were in the business for 10 years before they came to me. The reason they came to me is because they saw a huge billboard with their exact same logo and brand. And this company did not have a trademark, and they wanted to stop this other company, their competitor, from using their exact same brand. And so what we had to do is we had to register it first. So for them, it wasn't valuable until they saw their competitor, and that becomes a lot harder for you to claim your trademark rights and to stop your competitor from copying or stealing your brand. So it's always going to depend on the business owner. When is it going to be a nightmare for you to have to rebrand your business? And that's what trademarking prevents, is that you don't have to rebrand. Yeah, so the question is always going to be, when is your brand valuable to you? The moment it becomes valuable to you as a business owner, the moment that you do not want to rebrand it, that's the moment that trademarking is appropriate.
What would you advise if anybody notice or see, whether online or offline, their trademark or something similar to it, to their trademark, being used by another person or another company for whatever purpose? What is the first thing that they should do?
So the beautiful thing about trademark law is that they don't have to copy your exact brand. Trademark actually protects against similar confusing brands. The question is always going to be, are your customers and clients going to be confused when they see a similar brand? So what I'm going to advise is, one, do you already have the trademark registered? Because your options are a little bit limited if you don't. So if you do have your trademark registered, you are granted exclusive rights to be the only person in your industry to have rights to use that brand. If you start seeing someone using a brand that's similar to yours or exactly like yours, you are actually obligated to enforce your trademark rights. If you don't enforce your rights, then you could potentially lose your rights. So the first thing is always going to be, do you have it registered? If you do, then you need to notify the infringer or the claimed infringer and letting them know, hey, you're using my trademark, you're stepping on my trademark toes. If you don't stop, I'm gonna have to bring you to court. And usually that's done with a letter, a cease and desist letter. It's a formal notice. It basically puts them on notice that, hey, you're using my brand without my permission and therefore violating my trademark rights. I'm gonna give you a few days to discontinue use. That means change your website, change your business cards, change your business name, do whatever you need to do, but you have to stop using my brand. And if they fail to do that, then you would probably have to go into litigation and start asking the court to intervene to start enforcing your rights.
Yeah. One of the common things that happen is that we see companies coming from Europe thinking that I registered my brand in Europe, or I registered my brand in Italy or in Switzerland, and that's where I started, and now I have a branch or another subsidiary here in the UAE. I don't really need to redo the work. What do you say to that?
Misconception. So if you are registered, let's say in Italy or in Spain or in France, and then you decide to bring your brand into the UAE, sorry, you have no trademark rights unless you go into the UAE trademark office and request those trademarks to be granted. So again, there's no worldwide protection. Just because you're protected in your country and then you leave your country and you start marketing in another country, you don't automatically have your trademark rights. That's why it's super important to have a trademark lawyer who has access to global trademark registrations to help you to see, where do I need to actually register my brand?
Yeah. I'm going to repeat some questions that I hear from some of the entrepreneurs. Sometimes I hear like, I have a trade name. I established the company and it says trade name and I have the words mentioned. I don't need to register the brand itself because the name is very clear. So they register the company, they have the trade name on the license, but they don't go ahead and register the brand. Is it the same? Does it really have any protection?
The answer is no. There's no protections there. Just because you register your company name with an official government does not grant you any sort of trademark rights. Another big misconception with entrepreneurs is that I own the domain name. If I own the .coms, the .nets, the .ais, and I pay for the domain, then I automatically have trademark rights. Again, another misconception. Domain names are basically an address for you to live virtually online. As long as you're paying the subscription to have that domain name, then you have the PO box, you have your address. Otherwise, unless you actually get a trademark registered, approved by the trademark office, you don't have any type of trademark rights.
Have you seen any examples like this? Someone who have been working in the business, doing it for many years, and suddenly realize that someone else owned their brand. And how did, I don't know, what was the reaction? What was the outcome of this conflict in the end?
I had a social media management company that hired me after a few years of being in business. And the wonderful thing about working with an expert like myself is that before we do a trademark application, which can be denied, we do a trademark search, which allows me to look at the trademark landscape. who else is out there in the business world, in the internet world, and who else is using a brand that's similar to yours. The reason that a trademark search is super important before you even do an application is because we want to make sure of two things. One, how likely are you going to get approved for your trademark application? And two, if you do register your trademark or try to apply for your trademark, are you going to be inviting any kind of lawsuits because someone else has been using it before you? So with this client, she was using her brand for a few years. We do the trademark search, and we see that there's somebody else out there who predates her who has been using this brand. And so what we did, she insisted on moving forward anyway with the trademark registration against my recommendation. I'm just the advisor. You are the driver, I'm the passenger, and I have the map. I tell you what's likely to happen, but you make the decision. So we did the application, and lo and behold, like I told her, she got a cease and desist, lost the money for the trademark application, lost the trademark registration, and of course had to spend thousands of dollars to rebrand her entire business. So that's why it's super important to understand as a business owner, simply ask yourself, do I want to rebrand? And when we're talking about rebranding, we're talking about spending money on creating a new logo, creating a new tagline, creating a new website, creating new business cards, creating new product packaging. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Yeah. So it really comes down to how much money am I willing to invest? Not to mention the money that you put in towards your marketing, your ad spend. That also needs to be changed, and you have to start from scratch because now you have to train your customers and your clients, hey, I'm no longer this business anymore, we've rebranded, and you can try to sell it as something exciting, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to be losing time and customer loyalty, and you have to start all over because now you have to train your customers and clients to start associating this new product or service with this new brand.
And the cost. Absolutely. You know, I had a case like a few years ago with a similar scenario, and they were not even trying to steal the brand name or the logo. They choose to use the same color code for the product. It was an oil and gas company and a lubricant company, and they used the same color code that was very famous to be used by this huge company, just to build this similarity, because the client loyalty actually goes to the brand and the color code that was registered, in this case, together with the brand name of the big company, have allowed them to write a cease and desist letter, and they had a very good legal standing to stop the other smaller company from building this similarity and being kind of stealing their or leveraging on their brand.
Yeah, so remember, trademarks is all about a source identifier. It's an ID, it's your face. So it's not only your business name, it's not only your logo, it's not only your tagline, it can be colors. So if you get a pretty blue box with a white bow, you are pretty sure that it's coming from Tiffany & Company. There's no other brand that's allowed to use that Tiffany blue because it really does identify where that product is coming from. So similar situation with the oil and gas company that you were just explaining, especially when the infringer knows that this color code is recognized. That's why they're copying it. That's why they're stealing it. And although there's no intention required to be held liable for trademark infringement, a lot of people still do it intentionally, but there's not a requirement, which means that if you do it by accident, you can still be held liable. But most of the times, it's not by accident.
Enough of the negative talk. Now we need to go into something really positive, because we scared the audience enough of the risks and what could happen if they step on the IP toes of someone else, or they get their brand in risk of being infringed. What are the benefits that you might say that businesses should consider and register their brands for?
Sure. So I would agree, switching gears is a good idea.
Yes.
So the first thing, kind of going along with the risk, is peace of mind. You don't have to worry that you are going to have your brand copied or stolen. And if someone does do it, you actually know that you have legal recourse against them. The other thing is that you're going to be having peace of mind to know that you won't be accused of having been trademark infringed upon somebody else's brand. The other thing that I think is really beneficial for entrepreneurs and business owners to understand, we like money. And so with a trademark, when you are going to sell your business, or if you're looking for ways to create passive income, the best thing that you can do is to leverage the reputation that you've created around your trademark. So again, trademark gives you the exclusive rights to use your brand within an industry. When you have those exclusive rights, you get to control the messaging behind that brand. And when you are really successful in that messaging, you get to give other people permission to license that trademark and start expanding into other territories. For example, Disney. The Disney brand, they first started off in animation, creating movies, but now they have cruises, they have theme parks, they have movies, they have toys, they have clothing, they have jewelry. I mean, you name it, Disney is in that industry. The only way that they were able to expand into other industries and leverage their brand is by licensing their brand, giving other people permission to start using the brand and monetizing it. And Disney just has to sit back and collect royalty checks. So that's one way that business owners can really leverage their trademark. And then the other one is when they are going to sell their business, they can pretty much put any sort of price tag on the branding. So when they are transferring the assets to a new owner, to a new buyer, they can pretty much put whatever price tag they want on it. And they're really going to get to leverage all of those years of creating and managing and controlling the brand's reputation to a willing buyer. So it's really passive income for all the work that you've done without really having to create a whole nother business strategy, but just by leveraging your trademark rights.
This session was very informative and very helpful. I learned from it, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs should listen to your advices and should consider registering their trademark. Thank you so much for being with us and for the knowledge you share.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy educating entrepreneurs because an educated entrepreneur is an empowered entrepreneur. So thanks again for sharing your platform.
Thank you. This is your dose from Monday Legal. See you next week. And register your brand.